In chapter 15 of Acts, which is a kind of the narrative center of the composition, and which you have been asked to read, the author addresses one of the implications of preaching to both Jewish and Gentile audiences. The immediate issue, according to our author, is that since the movement self-perception is that of a messianic brand of Judaism, some people claim that non-Jewish fellow travelers should embrace basic ritual obligations ordained by the Jewish interpretation of the Torah. In other words, now they are to become truly insiders and not remain in their status of God-fearers only. Let us first deal with the outline of the discussion. Later we will try to put it in the context of broader contemporaneous Jewish attitudes towards Gentile sympathizers. In the beginning of the chapter we find Paul again in Antioch when, and it's the beginning of chapter 15, some men came down from Judea and were teaching the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. And when Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and debate with them, Paul and Barnabas and some of the others were appointed to go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and the elders about this question. So, being sent on their way by the church, it's a misleading translation, should be community, they passed through both Phoenicia and Samaria, reporting the conversion of the Gentiles, and they gave great joy to all the brethren. Paul is described here as being in contact with the local non-Jewish followers of Jesus, when some members of the movement coming from Judea start to teach them that circumcision is a condition of belonging to Israel and thus to the messianic redemption they expect. The author indicates that Paul was of a different opinion and that the disputation was prolonged and tough. In the final count, the non-Jewish participants didn't find the arguments of either side sufficiently convincing and pressed Paul to go to Jerusalem and find out what the apostles there think. The narrative is unambiguous. Paul's Gentile listeners were not that eager to get a pass on circumcision. In fact, they wished dearly to do what the leaders would deem right. If they believed that the Messiah was going to return in near future, that must have made their anguish about doing the right thing even stronger. Next passage clarifies that those pushing Gentiles to embrace the ritual commandments were former Pharisees, now an influential faction among Jesus' followers. And it was not about circumcision only. Circumcision was supposed to mark a conversion into Judaism and consequently fulfilling all other ritual observances. I start reading from verse 4. When they came to Jerusalem, meaning Paul and his entourage, they were welcomed by the community and the apostles and the elders, and they declared all that God had done with them. But some believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees rose up and said, "It is necessary to circumcise them and to charge them to keep the Torah of Moses." Then Peter's speech follows in verses 6 to 11, clearly reflecting the author's own perception. The author for whom it is important here also to play down possible disagreements between Peter and Paul. Peter claims that according to his understanding, the Gentiles received the eschatological gift of the Holy Spirit, characteristic of the Messianic era. This gift is a sign of forgiveness of sins and cleansing of hearts by faith, and as a result, those Gentiles have become pious and righteous. Moreover, this gift was given to them by God's graceful will, not because of any ritualistic efforts. This is what happened to the Jewish members of the movement too. Thus, there is no need to impose those ritual observances on them now.